What's going on, everybody? It's that time again. The AllSooners Podcast, episode 171 on this Wednesday, January 25th, 2023. Josh Callaway in Oklahoma City, Ryan Chapman in Moore, John Hoover in Tulsa. Gentlemen, how are we doing?
Where's my snow? I was promised snow, and there is no snow. We got nothing. We got some little spitting precipitation. Nothing accumulated. Woke up this morning very devastated. No snow. Come on, people. Come on, weather guys.
It was a borderline blizzard here. That's stunning.
Well, the Oklahoma basketball team was so cold last night that you figured it would have frozen over everything between Fort Worth and Norman, but I guess not.
I can't believe it didn't snow in Tulsa. That's incomprehensible to me because it just came down snow all day here yesterday. That's stunning. That makes no sense.
Nothing. I even put cardboard on my wife and daughter's windshields to so they could get out for work early today. Nothing. So.
Because you were prepared. That's why it was nothing. If you weren't prepared, it would have been Arctic.
I like to pretend that I'm prepared. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's been relatively calm around these here parts last week or so. Obviously, a couple weeks ago, we had a packed show. Last week, pretty much, it went longer than I anticipated. This week's show, a little lighter, but we have a few things we want to touch on. We'll get to basketball later on, like Ryan referenced. Got some things that need to be said about that team right now, but we'll get there when we get there. Let's start off with the biggest thing I think that's floating around right now, and I think Oklahoma fans are probably the most interested to hear our takes on both how much we buy it and what it would mean if it were to happen. We'll kind of dive into all angles of it. There's Jeff Lebby at Alabama smoke, and it's kind of just floating around. It's nothing too substantial, but Pete Thamel, who's obviously very well in the know in these things, said that Alabama is interested in Jeff. Now, we don't know much beyond that. Now, he said that before Bill O'Brien was even let go. Bill O'Brien has been let go. He's now actually going back to the Patriots. So it's like, okay, the wheels are in motion. Alabama is going to be in need of an OC. It's hard to know what to make of all of it, so we'll dive into what we think it would mean if it were to happen, but let's start off with just the obvious. How much do you guys foresee this being legitimate, or how concerned should you fans be, I guess, that this could happen, that Jeff Lebby could leave for Alabama?
Yeah, well, I think there's usually two ways to look at these things. One is where there's smoke, there's fire.
Right.
If Pete Thamel he's not reporting it. Now, keep in mind, he went on Feinbaum and said, the name I've heard is and Jeff Lebby, if Bill O'Brien were to leave. This is a couple of weeks ago. That's one way to look at it. Okay, smoke, fire. Another way is there's an agent out there who wants his client's name in the ether, so his client can A, get a raise, B, get a better job, more money for the agent. That's the other way how these things work. So I think there's definitely smoke. Is there fire? Maybe. If Nick Saban wants an assistant coach, I don't care who you're coaching for. I don't care where you went to school. I don't care what the plan is. If Nick Saban calls, you've got to pick up the phone, you've got to answer, and you've got to probably go interview if he wants to interview you.
Yeah, that Alabama OC job's been a launching pad. There's a reason that for the most part, since the Alabama dynasty really got up and running, guys stay there 2-3 years max for the most part, and then they take a job that they want. And Bill O'Brien leaving that job for an OC job, another OC job, but going back to the NFL, that makes sense, too. That's a guy that sounds like he wanted to go back to the NFL, was pretty successful on the coaching side, not the GM side. Bill O'Brien was. And so, yeah, that's one of those things where Oklahoma, if you had dialed back the clock 12 months ago, I don't think Oklahoma fans would say, no, you don't leave Oklahoma just to go to Alabama, for OC, all that stuff. Well, hey, the Oklahoma head coach just got poached a year ago, right? What's to say the offensive coordinator couldn't go to what is a better job, which is the Alabama offensive coordinator job? But when you start to kind of think about it a little bit, yes, it's Jeff Lebby's alma mater at Oklahoma. That's one thing that I think Oklahoma fans feel good about. But the other one would be, it was very apparent that Jeff Lebby had no oversight from the head coach in the ways of Brent Venables meddling or anything like that. I guarantee you Brent Venables was not telling Jeff Lebby to have 90-second or less drives in the second half of Bedlam. That's not a guy that has the head coach barking at him left, right, and center all the time. Leaving that to go to Alabama, There's no guarantee that you're going to have that same setup. You're going to have the same freedom on that side of the football, all that. So there would be a lot of stuff for Jeff Lebby to actually consider other than just the, hey, this would be a launch pad for what I want. Because if you're successful as the Oklahoma OC, Brent Venables is not going anywhere because that means the team's doing well. You're also going to be a launch pad for whatever job you want. It's just kind of might take an extra year or two to get that thing up and running at Oklahoma.
Yeah, it's hard because it is one of those few spots where, Alabama comes calling, you have to listen kind of a thing. I have a hard time seeing Jeff Lebby leaving Oklahoma after 1 year. Like Ryan said, it is his alma mater. He does have, this is his offense completely. He's completely running the show here. Everything Ryan was just saying. He has all these guys coming in. And, it's maybe not fair to say, but he kind of would be screwing OU over a little bit if he left, especially if he took these players with him. Jackson Arnold, obviously the biggest one. So I have a hard time seeing that. But you never know. If it's a big pay increase, who knows? So we'll see how that goes. Something certainly worth keeping an eye on. I wouldn't sweat it too much if I was an OU fan, but until somebody's hired for that job, you kind of have to worry about it if you're Oklahoma. That's kind of just the way it is. So let me ask you guys this. If it were to happen, let's play devil's advocate. It does happen. How damaging is that for Oklahoma? How bad does it look, first off, for OU to lose their OC 1 year after Lincoln leaves, like Ryan said? And then the ramifications. I mean, is he just going to take everybody with him? Is Arnold going to follow him? And where does that leave the team and the program right now? Because there's a lot of people who kind of do the whole, if he leaves, whatever kind of a thing. Because Jeff Lebby didn't have like a first season that people loved. It would be not good, in my opinion. What do you guys think?
Yeah, if he takes the offensive coordinator job at Florida or Penn State or even a Clemson or something like that, you raise your eyebrows and say, what? But if it's Alabama's got to pass with all these things. They do. They're that team. They're that program. So I don't think it would be like damaging like to the image. It'd be like, crap, we got to reset. We got to go get another offensive coordinator. Hopefully one that Jackson Arnold likes, because that's the main thing here is what is Jackson Arnold. He's the foundational player for the next 3 years at least. He needs to be, assured that his offensive coordinator and he are on the same page. It's a guy he can get along with, all that. But I think there's a faction of fans out there that believes strongly that Jeff Lebby was the real magnet for Jackson Arnold. And there may be some of that's true. I think there's another faction that believes Jackson Arnold picked Oklahoma because it's proximity, it's fans here. Now Peyton Bowen's here. You know what I mean? Friends are here at OU. I think he thinks that he's his own man. And this is me talking. I think he thinks I'm my own man. I'm going to go where I want. I don't have to go where any coach wants me. But the Jeff Lebby thing is pretty interesting because Jeff Lebby is one of the big reasons why Jackson Arnold came to Oklahoma.
Yeah, I think this question's a little less complicated than it would have been pre-signing day. Now, Jackson Arnold is signed. He's enrolled. He's in Norman, right? He's an early enrollee, all that stuff. You would think that even if Jeff Lebby were to leave, that you'd get at least a year for whoever the new guy is to work with him and show him like, no, I know you really like Jeff Lebby, but now that you've worked with me for a year, all this stuff, you can stay. On the image front, I disagree. I think that's a huge problem because Oklahoma does not view itself. It does not project to the world that it is less than anyone. And in back-to-back off seasons, your head coach left for USC and your OC left for Alabama. And the kids you're recruiting, they're not like us. They don't have the encyclopedias of college football knowledge that, they're not sitting through watching random games from the 80s that don't involve Oklahoma or whatever just because we like college football. A lot of what they absorb is what they're recruited to and then what is negatively recruited against them. So if you have anyone else coming sitting in the living room, talk about Oklahoma, it's like, why would you want to go there? Their head coach 2 years ago left for USC. Their offensive coordinator left for Alabama. What's wrong in Norman? Why are these guys going elsewhere? Oklahoma says they've got all this stuff. They say they've got everything. They haven't won a playoff game. They haven't been close the last 2 years. You've got a new coach that's a first-time head coach. Look at what he did in year one. The last head coach left for USC. The offensive coordinator was there for a year, went to Alabama. Like, that's a huge image problem on the recruiting trail. And guess what? You're going to recruit with the SEC. They're not kind out there. They don't use the kid gloves. I think that would be the biggest thing. Now, you go out, you win a lot of games in year 2 under Brent Venables, and that papers over that image problem. But I just think in the short term, that would be, I think that's a legitimate issue if it were to happen in Oklahoma. Not that I think it will, but I do think that's legitimate, and that would kind of be the sting on the recruiting trail.
Yeah, I agree. I don't think it would be a good look for Oklahoma at all. And really, I mean, you can survive it a lot more if you keep Arnold. And I don't know that they would. It's hard to say. Now, I'm not going to pretend like I know Jackson Arnold extremely well, but I've talked to him twice, very far apart, when Ryan and I were at Elite 11, then when Hoover and I were at Orlando. And I will say that I honestly did feel like he was a little more OU-oriented the second time. The first time Ryan and I talked to him, I definitely got off with the impression of, if Jeff Lebby isn't there, I don't know that he would be at OU, and I think he would maybe follow him. This last time was much more proud of the class they built, proud of what they got going on. He said the whole thing about guys want to be at OU even after they won 6 wins, all that stuff. So maybe he is signed for a year. So you would have a little bit of time to try and work on him for a year, basically pitch him for an entire season. But it's a slippery slope. We'll see. And where would Oklahoma go for the hire, too? That's a fun game.
Well, you'd have him for a year unless he goes the Jaden Rashada route where he got appeals to the NCAA. He got a false bill of goods and he wants a transfer, wants a release from his NLI. He's a guy that it's a good observation you just made, Josh, that he was, when he signed, or when he committed, I should say, and during early in that process, he was committed to Jeff Lebby. He was committed to the quarterback's coach. But the fact is, he's recruited a lot of this class now at Oklahoma. He has taken ownership of being him, that guy that has been in charge of kind of recruiting this class, being the quarterback, being the 5-star quarterback that comes in and makes a bunch of phone calls and DMs other guys and tells them to come to Oklahoma. He's that guy. So, good point that he would probably stick around at least for a year to see the next offensive coordinator.
Going to be interesting. Going to certainly worth keeping an eye on. Stuff that we can do in January, speculate and eyeball a little bit. So we'll keep an eye on. Like I said, until Bama hires somebody, it's going to be just kind of the matzo ball hanging out there. So we'll see what happens in due time. Now, Oklahoma did make a staff hire this week, apparently. Nothing's been announced officially, but he put some stuff on Instagram, and Brent Venables retweeted a thing. So pretty sure. James Skalski, I believe that's how you say it, hopefully. Linebacker at Clemson, under Brent Venables, of course, was a really good one, all ACC, all that good stuff. 2021 is how recently he was playing at Clemson. He announced he's coming to Oklahoma, which is where his dad played in, I think, the 80s. This is an interesting get, especially the timing of it. Obviously, a guy who just came off the field and was a good player. We don't know his role. Obviously, we assume he's some kind of analyst or GA or something to that capacity. But this is, can only help, right? I mean, he's a good football player for Brent Venables recently, very recently. I mean, I don't know entirely how much of an impact a guy like this can have in his role, but I don't know how it could be anything but a positive. We'll see how it shakes out soon and when Brent gets to talk about it for the first time.
Yeah, when it becomes official, it will officially be a good hire. Getting a young, talented, passionate guy like that played for 6 years at Clemson and was Venables' guy kind of for 6 years at Clemson. So getting another set of eyes on the linebackers is going to be good, especially as you rebuild that linebacker core. Ted Roof has been through a million, linebacker job changes, I guess, in his career. So he's not worried about it, but it would be good. It's always going to be good to have a young, energetic, enthusiastic, experienced guy, at least in playing the position, to come in and be your GA or your defensive analyst or whatever it is. He's a good hand, I would think, and he's getting, he's young, he's getting his coaching experience started, so his coaching career. So he's a guy that's going to be willing to do whatever Brent Venables wants him to do.
Yeah, it's not something that we look at and go, oh my gosh, this move alone is going to get OU 3 wins they didn't have last year. It's not one of those things, but it's a guy that played forever under Brent Venables. He'll know that defense like the back of his hand. And I think the big value of those guys right now is they're going to have to, what they do watching practice and watching everything that's going on, they're going to have to, once everyone gets back into the film room, fill that void of the maximum a person's played at Oklahoma under Brent Venables is a year plus now entering winter, spring, all that stuff. And so if you have a guy that knows the defense like the back of their hand, he can step in and maybe fill that void of a guy that would normally, hey, I've been in this defense for 4 years. I know all the intricacies. Let me show you this instead of that. Something that the coaches are up here doing the 10,000 foot view thing. I'm going to show you need to make this step or that step or something like that to help those young guys along. And I'm kind of curious, a question we'll have to have answered during spring and into next fall is this defense more willing to play freshmen as there are more experienced guys to help them along? If so, then maybe some extra analysts can help kind of fill that void, just because this defense hasn't had enough time under Venables to have 4-year starters or 4-year guys that have been in the system.
And he's a 2-time national champ, 5-time conference champ, 5 playoff appearances. I mean, this guy knows what he's doing on the football field. So he brings a nice little pedigree to the assistant coaching staff.
Right, and like you said, Hoove, I mean, obviously linebacker, Clemson, and linebacker was a point of weakness for Oklahoma last year. It wasn't exactly strong. I know that's Ted Roof's position, and it's supposed to be Brent Venables' forte, and I'm sure he'll get it going in due time, but it couldn't hurt to have some extra help there after he had a year where Stutzman's year was a little up and down. Ugwoegbu was in the portal now. We're going to talk about him actually in the next segment. So it couldn't hurt. So we'll see how that works out, and like Ryan said, we'll find out more about it whenever it's official, and then when we can actually talk to Brent about it here coming up in the spring in just a couple of months. All right, we'll take a time out, come back. Segment 2, got some transfer portal things we want to touch on, as well as a big weekend in the NFL for the Sooners. Sooners getting a ring. So we'll talk about that as well. Next up right here on the AllSooners Podcast. On Twitter, you can follow AllSooners at @all_Sooners. Ryan's at _Ryan Chapman. Who's at John E. Hoover. I'm at Josh M. Callaway. Our website is allsooners.com. We are a Fan Nation affiliate, part of the Sports Illustrated Network. All right, like it's been many times before, segment 2, the unofficial transfer portal segment of the show. Got a few things to hit on here in the last week or so. We'll start with Micah Bowens. So he hits the portal just this week. A grad transfer with 3 years of eligibility, which is like an oxymoron. It's like hard to compute that in my brain. What a weird couple of years for Micah Bowens. He comes from Penn State. He has a decent spring game where he showed some flashes in 2021 of like, okay, maybe, we'll see down the road, maybe a gadget guy or something, and just never even got even remotely sort of close to seeing the field. He was behind a walk-on in Ralph Rucker. He was like at least the 5th guy or maybe lower on the depth chart this season. What a weird. He's going to be a great guy in like 5 years to be like, remember when OU had Micah Bowens on the team, this really athletic kid from Penn State who just was so buried on the depth chart to a level that maybe I've never even seen before. He was underneath just concrete slabs miles long on that depth chart. What a weird run for him.
It was a weird run. He was behind Ben Harris, remember? The local walk-on. Just when we saw him in the spring, and you could tell by the Twitter responses and the Facebook replies and all this stuff and the voicemails and the emails that we get that come in from fans, complaints from fans, suggestion box, right? Why aren't they playing Micah Bowens more? Everybody wanted to know, why aren't they playing Micah Bowens more? I don't know. I don't know what kind of practice he had yesterday or this week, or who he's ahead of on the depth chart, who he's behind on the depth chart. It's bizarre, but again, we see him in the spring game, and we talked about it a number of times. This is podcast 170. We've probably talked about it 169 times, right? Micah Bowens can run the football. Why isn't he a change of pace guy? Why isn't he, he's an electrifying athlete. Why don't you get the ball in his hands? Some, maybe he needs to move positions. Maybe he needs to play slot receiver. Maybe he needs to do some. It's unbelievable how it just never worked. He's here 2 full years and never got a snap.
Yeah, 2 different quarterback evaluators never put him close to the football field, frankly, for meaningful snaps. And if it wasn't going to happen in OU, Texas, where the game plan was predicated around a quarterback playing wide receiver, bunny ears, wide receiver, just being spread out wide and letting Braden Willis, Eric Gray, Jalil Farouk, Marcus Major, direct snap, then it wasn't going to happen. So he moving on, get to actually get a chance to go out there and play. It'll be interesting to see what level he winds up at, just because all he's going to be able to share is practice film. And I don't know at Oklahoma, based off how buried he was in the depth chart, how much of that practice film is going to be actually of him running Oklahoma's offense versus the scout team. So again, kind of like we were talking about, the biggest effect next year is, I guess, Oklahoma fans will have to find somebody else to gravitate to if they're looking for, why is it this guy out there? I imagine that'll be Jackson Arnold.
Unfathomable to me that the way his run went. I mean, he was at Penn State, so he had not one but two blue blood programs said, yeah, let's bring this guy in. And like we said, just completely buried behind walk-ons. This is a scholarship player behind walk-ons. Wild run for him. So we'll see. Like Ryan said, I'm very interested to see what kind of a market he has. Can he sell people on that athleticism again? Maybe. We'll find out. So we'll let you know whenever he lands somewhere. But what a weird run for him. Bizarre, truly.
Do you guys think in this case right here, would there be a market for a college combine where you don't have the film, right? And maybe all the practice film, as Ryan referenced, is the only practice film you have is scout team. Maybe you need to go to a central location, Indianapolis or Kansas City or something, and have a combine and show everybody, hey, I'm still that guy I was in high school 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 4 years ago. Might be something to think about.
Give us recruiting camp season 2.0. Roll through on Saturday. We've got the high school prospects, and it's a bunch of recruiting reporters. On Sunday, all the coaches who need to fill their roster, the transfer portal holes, they descend upon a central location and just do the whole thing over for college kids in the portal. Call them back.
Great idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
I need to start get this ball rolling.
Yeah, sure. You can be the founder of the Hoover Portal Camp or whatever you want to call it. I mean, not that this is a good, barometer at all, but when we were at practice in fall camp and stuff like that,
John Hoover's camp for wayward portal quarterbacks. That's what we'll call it.
When we're at practice stuff, like Micah Bones is there throwing it around, like it's not like he must just not have an arm at all. Like he's capable. Apparently, I mean, he's at least competent in some capacity. It's just like I said, unfathomable. Especially when Gabriel was hurt. It's like, why not put him in just to run around? He's very fat. Like I don't know. There has to be more to that we just don't get. There has to be, because it just on its surface makes no sense. Elsewhere in the portal, David Ugwoegbu, who we talked about, I was very interested to see his market. Another one of these guys, because most of the guys who have left OU have not really landed anywhere of supreme note. Theo Weiss to Missouri, probably the biggest one. But David Ugwoegbu lands with Houston. So he stays within the conference, technically, and he's moving to defensive end. So what do you make of both of that? I guess, how do you absorb that information in terms of him switching positions and also, he's in the Big 12. It doesn't feel like a Power 5 because they weren't until literally now, but it is a Power 5 program now. Now we'll see how it works out for him. Maybe that can be a good landing spot for him. We'll see.
You guys correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe I dreamed this. Did David Ugwoegbu work out at defensive end in the spring, I think, of 2021? After being a kind of a bit player in 2020, they said, you know what, we're kind of packed at linebacker. Let's move you to defensive end. I got the feeling that was a coaching move. I didn't know it was David saying, as he said in his story in Houston, I'm moving to defensive end where I can be my real self or my full self. Did I dream that? Wasn't he defensive end in spring and it just didn't work out? He didn't catch on. 6'4", 250. I mean, that's a heck of a defensive end body.
Yeah. Well, he was a tweener in Grinch's defense. And if you remember, though, coming out of 2021 into 2022, the big storyline surrounding David Ugwoegbu was in the lead up to the Oregon game in the Alamo Bowl. He had committed to himself, I, for my entire career, have been at one spot and mentally been like, I'd kind of like to be over at defensive end or rush linebacker or whatever it is. And coming out of the Alamo Bowl, he had said, no, I am dedicated. I want to be an inside linebacker. And then when Brent Venables was the hire, that just reinforced it to him that and I'm going to have the best coach possible to coach me as an inside linebacker. And leading into spring ball or in spring ball, when we got the, a bunch of the player availability, stuff like that, that was the David Ugwoegbu story, is that I'm dedicated to playing middle linebacker. I'm staying here at middle linebacker. I'm not looking to bounce to outside, anything like that. And he was productive, albeit far from perfect this year. I just think that this move to defensive end probably gives some insight into how that exit interview probably went with David Ugwoegbu, where it was either we had speculated last time, was this you can come back, but you're not going to, those snaps that you played, like you're going to have to earn them all back. It's not like we're just going to hand them back to you. Well, maybe David Ugwoegbu himself had said, okay, I did this season at linebacker. I realized, no, not for me. I want to go to defensive end. And he doesn't fit Oklahoma's defensive end room.
Yeah.
And so that made the decision easiest on everyone, just to say, hey, you can go pursue defensive end somewhere else. And we're thankful for the year that you gave us here with the new coaching staff.
Venables linebackers and Venables safeties throughout the years, going all the way back to OU the first time, will tell you that it's a really he asks a lot of pre-snap recognition and understanding of concepts, what offenses are trying to do and how they're moving and how they're changing and shifting and evolving over the course of one play. They'll tell you, the safeties and linebackers will tell you, yeah, man, it's unbelievable, the scholastic element of learning Brent Venables' defense from the linebacker position, all the responsibilities they have, and the safety position. So I could see where a guy is more of an athlete, wants to just read and react, use his superior frame and go get people. I could see where defensive end would be a much more comfortable position for somebody like David Ugwoegbu.
Yeah, I agree. I kind of like the move for him. Frankly, we've talked about it many times. Just few guys are as physically imposing on that team last year as David Ugwoegbu. So maybe get him, off the ball, just trying to get after the passer. Maybe that's just going to be better for him. So we'll see. We'll keep an eye out for him. Maybe Oklahoma plays Houston. Obviously, the rumblings that we've heard, they don't, but maybe they do. And that could be a fun little thing to watch out for if it happens.
What are you saying? The Big 12 schedule's not out yet?
It's still not out, folks.
Still not out?
Believe it or not.
What
I think the 2023 season may start, and it's still not out. I think we may just be playing non-conference games. Like, where do we go next? I don't know. We'll find out when we get there. We got the Texas game.
One of our good friends, Abby Bitterman, who does a great job covering OU softball for the Norman Transcript, she's worked at Oklahoma. She texted me and she suggested that what the Big 12 is going to do is they're going to blindfold every team and say this is a designated road weekend, and you'll fly somewhere and you'll find out who you're playing when you land on Friday night.
That'd be great.
And that in response, the home team will be sitting there, and on Friday they're like, "Congratulations, Oklahoma! This week you have UCF tomorrow, yay!" Because the Big 12 is a disaster. If anyone thought that by OU and Texas leaving this was going to be harmonious and all that stuff, same conference that had no foresight, lost Nebraska, Colorado, A&M, Missouri, didn't expand the first time, same old problems.
This schedule delay is the best evidence we have, to my estimation, the best evidence that we've had so far that Oklahoma and Texas are leaving early, because they had their schedule set up. They had it, okay, you're going here, you're going to be down here, and then over here, and then they had the matrix all laid out, and they had it all set up. Everybody's playing everybody. Everybody's going to get 2 games with Oklahoma and Texas. Oh, crap, they're leaving early. Now we got to redo the whole thing. So this is, I guess, Exhibit A, that OU and Texas will be gone in 2024.
Yeah, and, there has been some people have brought it up and floated around, like, is there any potential that this SEC move could be coming even earlier than that this coming season? Part of the delay, I don't think so. SEC schedule's already out, but it is baffling that the Big 12 schedule is so behind. It makes no sense. So we'll see. Maybe just kind of do a Russian roulette type wheel each week, and that's how you just do it. Maybe OU ends up playing Bedlam like 4 times. Just let it happen.
I was going to say they should just play OU Texas 9 times this year. That OU and Texas should just be like, screw y'all. You can't figure this crap out. You guys schedule amongst yourselves. We will play each other. We will make way more money than the rest of you because no one cares about Cincinnati or BYU football, TV-wise. And it'll be gold.
4 in Norman, 4 in Austin, the 1 in Dallas. There you go.
That's a great idea.
And at least 4 of those games. Yeah, at least 3 of those games need to be Arnold versus Arch, so that we have an odd number and that we get a definitive. One of them is better. And we just call it a day.
I was going to ask you guys, did you guys see, made me think of it, did you guys see in the BYU press box. Did you guys see this? They put that big. Did you see this, Sue? If Ryan did,
No.
they put this big thing up of all the Big 12 teams. So like they're in the Big 12 now. It's this big fancy thing. Every school's got their own plaque in the Big 12. And then OU and Texas are on their same plaque. They are splitting a plaque in the corner. So everybody got their own plaque, but then OU and Texas are shoved into one plaque in the corner. Pretty funny. Pretty funny little move there. It's like, they're only going to be here for a year. Just have them split it.
We can't pay for the plastic for 2 plaques for 1 year. It can't be done.
The OU logo is on top, so fans will like that. The OU logo is on top. The Texas logo is on the bottom. Another transfer portal thing real quick. I forgot to put on the rundown, but Clayton Smith announced he was going to Arizona State. That was right after the show last week. It was like last Thursday, I think. He's another one of those guys I was curious to the market. I feel like that probably for most of these guys, but especially him because he was such a high recruit. It's nuts every time I look back at his profile. Number 2 edge in the class in 247 Sports Composite in 2021. That's absurd. It didn't work out, obviously. He also signed up for a different defense than what is there now, obviously. So he goes to Arizona State, which is a mess, for lack of a better term, right now. I don't know what to really make of that program as they try to get out of everything they're coming out of at the moment. But I don't know. Another interesting get here. We'll see Clayton Smith get to go against Caleb Williams probably next year. That's something.
I thought Clayton Williams was going to be a star at Oklahoma, like a lot of people did. Unbelievable athletic ability. They put him at tight end, slot receiver in high school, and he went up and made some unbelievable catches. The guy's just unbelievably athletic. You wonder what goes on in practice, in meeting rooms, and in individual workouts and stuff like that. Why a guy with that kind of natural ability can't catch on.
Yeah, it looked like he was going to be the heir apparent to Ronnie Perkins and Nick Benito, kind of in that rush in for Alex Grinch. Like Josh said, you flip over to Brent Venables. There's not really that spot in this defense for kind of a hybrid tweener to be that guy. And so heading out to a spot that makes a lot more sense for him. And like Josh said, we'll get to see Clayton Smith v. Caleb Williams. We'll also get to see Clayton Smith v. Alan Bowman in Game 2 next year as the Cowboys take a trip out there as well.
Alan Bowman, man. That's going to be
He's been around.
He's been around, so we'll see that next year. Oklahoma made it another addition on the recruiting trail with a preferred walk-on from Bixby. It's the second time they've done this. They went and got Jacob Snyder in December, and they now add his name's Cale Feudgate. He's a safety, so he'll be coming in. I mean, I'm not going to ask you to break down Cale Feudgate tape or anything like that, but obviously another guy who you get as a preferred walk-on from a really good program in Oklahoma, which we talked about it many times, has been an emphasis of this staff of Brent Venables. They've put an emphasis on getting the guys in state, and there are certainly, I don't know if there's a program that you're more better off taking a chance on than Bixby, which is just run high school football in Oklahoma for about a half decade now, if you're unfamiliar with the high school scene. So I don't know, another interesting little pickup here. We'll see how it pans out. Odds are one of these preferred walk-ons that they get is going to pan out into something. I mean, it's like one of these is going to hit, I feel like.
One of them's already hit.
Yeah, Freeman.
Right?
Yeah.
Freeman, right. So expect big things from Freeman next year. But I think you're right, Josh. This is a win-win-win-win-win all the way down the line for Oklahoma, for OK Preps, for Bixby, for Cale Feudgate, for all these. Every element of this comes away as a winner. I was told on the best team in the state, on one of the best teams in the history of the state. I was told that he's the actual MVP. He's the guy. He's the kind of the straw that stirred the drink, especially for that defense, district defensive MVP and all that stuff, all-state type talent, and probably, arguably, one of the 2 or 3 best receivers on the team on a team where they're sending receivers into Division I football regularly. So he was a guy that I think he had 12 touchdowns as a receiver, almost 700 yards receiving. So very athletic, very smart as a football player. This is one of those guys that can't wait to get in camp. And what does it do? It keeps those arteries open to other OK Preps powerhouses, and certainly to Lauren Montgomery and Bixby.
Yeah, for sure. And Brent Middles talks all the time, or talked all the time this year about the scout team guys, that they have to be the ones that are looking for a better spot, stuff like that. This is where maybe I'm a little callous, but hey, you give me 4-star wide receiver or 5-star wide receiver, and the one that just loves Oklahoma is going to play better. And I'm just like, no, the more talented wide receiver is probably going to play better. On the scout team, the guys that want to be there and are just fired up about going in and doing everything they can to make that team better, that matters a ton. So like if that's the worst case scenario, then that's a really good addition for the team. And that's just assuming that one of those guys doesn't pan out, like Josh said.
Lauren Montgomery as OC if Jeff Lebby leaves.
Why not?
Stay woke. That could happen. Only a matter of time before somebody scoops up that guy. Bixby's just unreal. So wrapping up here this segment, and we'll get to some other sports in the last segment. NFL playoffs over the weekend. So it's funny because I mentioned last week, the Jaguars were the only team remaining without an Oklahoma player on the roster. They then were knocked out. So when there were 7 teams left, Oklahoma had already clinched that they will win a Super Bowl from one of their guys, which is kind of wild. And now going into next weekend, I'm sure you've seen the stat by now, 9 players on active rosters. That's the most of any program on Championship Sunday, which is pretty wild. That doesn't even include Tyrese Robinson, who's on practice squad with the Eagles. Kenny Brooks, who, it's weird, he was on practice squad, then they cut him. Now he's on some kind of future. I'm not going to act like I totally get it. He's on the Eagles, though, still. And Grant Calcaterra, who doesn't go in the books as an OU player because he didn't finish at OU. But he's on the Eagles as well. So 12 guys, if you want to do that, are on teams this weekend playing for a championship. Pretty wild, and we'll see how it bears out. But a big weekend for NFL guys. Joe Mixon, a big performance once again for him as the Bengals got that big road win. So good stuff. We'll see what Sooner can come through with a ring when we get there.
I saw this question raised twice over the weekend, and the question is now the new dumbest debate of the season, and that is who gets to claim Jalen Hurts? Is it Alabama fans or is it Oklahoma fans? There's a debate going on. It's just like, shut up. It's not a debate. Guess what? He played for Alabama for 3 years, did great things, graduated from Alabama, and then came to Oklahoma and got some great coaching from Lincoln Riley and got himself drafted. It's both, you morons. Stop trying to create debate where there is none.
But who gets to claim Joe Burrow? LSU or Ohio State? I'm kidding.
Right.
I'm kidding.
Right.
This, if you've got no horse left in the fight, as I know a lot of people around here, big Dallas Cowboys fans, sorry. Look, we've still got a very huge possibility on the board, just like everyone always projected. If Kansas City and Philly both win, you've got a pair of former OU quarterbacks duking it out in the Super Bowl between Jalen Hurts and Blake Bell. So yeah, just like everybody chalked it up. 2 OU quarterbacks dominant. No, that stat you threw out there, Josh, are the most active roster guys, and like regardless of who it is, at Kansas City, you're talking about Orlando Brown and Creed Humphrey being a huge part of what they're doing, right? Cincinnati, the running game, and then both in the NFC with Trent Williams and Lane Johnson do huge vocal, emotional leaders, guys that set the tone, as well as being phenomenal at their positions, even with Lane Johnson playing through what we think is an abdominal injury. A really good showing for Sooners in the NFL here throughout the playoffs.
Good showing for Big 12 quarterbacks too, huh?
Extremely.
3 of the 4 still playing are Big 12 quarterbacks. Go Brocktober.
Extremely. Yeah, with all due respect to Bobby Evans last year, whoever wins the Super Bowl, they will have played an instrumental role in it, to Ryan's point, which is, kind of cool. Yeah, Jalen Hurts versus Brock Purdy this weekend. This happened before. We've seen this movie before. 2019, they played in Norman. That was an NFC Championship preview, little did we know. And,
the Eagles need to sign Parnell Motley.
A huge blown lead.
Eagles need to sign Parnell Motley.
ASAP.
Did he get away with PI? Maybe a little bit on that conversion.
It's a competitive catch.
They're not going to call it in the NFL to decide the NFC Championship game. That's for damn sure. Get Parnell to Philly.
I'll tell you who didn't get away is Brocktober. Brock Purdy didn't get away with not throwing to Charlie Kolar. Charlie Kolar was wide open, as we all know. That would have shocked the world again. Second year in a row. Was that 19?
Yeah. Yeah, that explains why Purdy's doing so well with the Niners. He has Kittle, and he's like, I've seen this movie before.
Yeah.
Kolar is the Kittle of the Big 12 for a while there. So that makes sense. Yeah, the Jalen Hurts, going back to that, I think a lot of the other cases like Burrow, and they're pretty open and shut. It's pretty obvious. So I think the Hurts one has put people's brains just in a pretzel. Like who said, it's both. And they both have a legitimate claim to him. He played most of his career with Alabama. That's, he graduated from there, but at the same time, he would not be in the NFL without that 1 year at OU. Certainly not starting. Right. Maybe as like a running back down if he stuck with Bama. So both schools have a claim to him. I don't know why that can't just be accepted. It's got to be. It is one of those. It's raging the internet, and it's really dumb. So hopefully we can move on from that. But I imagine it's going to just keep going, especially if the Eagles keep winning. So we'll see how that goes.
Hey, let me ask you this: as long as we're talking about it, I started thinking about this list yesterday. Oklahoma's got the longest in the nation streak of having at least 4 players drafted. I got to thinking about this. I went into the season, maybe it was middle of the season, and I'm thinking, well, this is going to be the year that streak ends. But as I look at the names on this OU's draft eligible guys, the streak's going to continue, right? That streak is definitely going to continue. You got Eric Gray, you got Braden Willis, you got Marvin Mims, and then you got all those linemen, Morris and Harrison and Redmond, Jeffrey Johnson.
Yeah.
Those guys are all going to get drafted. You could have 8 guys drafted again this year.
Deshaun White, another guy that I think will test really well, and then I'm just going to get, I think, rave reviews from what he did absorbing the defense this year, Brent Venables, and we know a ton of NFL GMs love grabbing Clemson guys, all that stuff. Yeah, that streak should be in good hands.
I would think so. I mean, just Mims and Wanye and Anton right there. That's 3 locks. So then you just need somebody to, and I would imagine, yeah, that streak's going to survive another year. Now we can look forward to next year and continue to do the round. Dylan Gabriel? No, we'll see. We'll talk about that in due time. All right, wrap up this segment. We'll come back. We'll go into some other sports. Some things need to be said about this men's basketball team. We'll do it next. We'll talk about the women who are doing very well on the other hand, and we'll also hit some other sports as well. Lots of things going on right now in these here parts as we wrap it up next here on the final segment of the AllSooners Podcast. Final segment of the AllSooners Podcast, episode 171. Get through some last few things here, send you on your way. Before we get to other sports, I do want to pump real quick that Hoover's been doing a series on AllSooners.com that is introducing you to all the early enrollees, guys who we're going to see in spring ball. Really, I mean, the most intriguing part of spring ball is to see the new guys more than anything. And who's been going through them one at a time, kind of outlining what to expect for Oklahoma fans, getting people a chance to get to find out a little bit more about them. So obviously that's a good thing. And Hoove, you can obviously elaborate more on what's been going on with that series and what you have coming up.
Yeah, get yourself to allsooners.com. Click on the football tab if you just want to look at these incoming early enrollees. The series that we're literally in the middle of right now today was part 7 of a 14-part series. I'm not real big on 14-part series, but this is an unprecedented class, the number of guys who are enrolling early. We started alphabetically, but despite our best intentions to stay alphabetical, it didn't quite work out that way. So we had to do some shifting around the scheduling anyway. We've gotten to PJ Adebawore. We've gotten to Jackson Arnold. We've gotten to Joshua Bates, Peyton Bowen, Kendall Dolby, Caden Green, and this morning we ran Dalen Smothers. Interesting story from him. He didn't even play football his senior year of high school, and I've been wondering about that, and it's not a story that's really been told a whole lot, so I got his high school coach to get in there and tell me kind of what happened. I say his high school coach. He transferred his senior year, so he never got to play for this coach, but the coach got to know him, got to welcome him into the fold, and he talked about his leadership, and he talked about his role model and what an example he was for other young people. So yeah, strongly recommend. We're going to have, who is today? Josiah Wagner is today. Talk to his high school coach who is currently on leave, maternity leave. I should say fraternity leave, right? Paternity, I guess it is. His wife just had a baby, so up in Seattle. So yeah, he's home and more than willing to talk about Josiah Wagner. Great conversation I had with him recently. So yeah, check that out, allsooners.com. You'll get to know each one of these new guys. And then coming after that, we're going to do the same thing for the transfer portal guys. We're going to talk to people who know them from their previous stop.
Yeah.
So we're going to present that to you at some point in the very near future, hopefully before spring football gets rolling.
That should roll us all the way in. And then, as we always say, you'll look up and we'll be in the midst of spring football press conferences and ramping into the spring game here, which is coming April 22nd before we know it.
Yeah, no details yet. We did get the date, April 22nd. So mark your calendars. Spring game coming up. Who was there a whole section in the Dalen Smothers one of Brent Venables committing a minor recruiting violation by saying his name? That's like what I'm going to associate with him his whole run.
That was something.
It was great.
When he said that, we all just, because we all kind of know, nobody in that audience of sports writers and broadcasters, none of us are in the NCAA rule book. But we know that one. That's the one that we know. They're not allowed.
Right.
We've asked him a million times about players. I can't really talk about it. I can't say their name. I can't mention them specifically. He just threw it out there, and then he's like, I guess I'm not supposed to say that.
Yeah, it was funny, too, because, again, this season, especially with how the season went, there were a ton of broad strokes of, hey, how does your recruiting pitch change? And stuff like that. There was on signing day in the midst of the Bowen saga, right? It was Hoove. You had asked him basically, like, do you have to keep the door open, all that stuff. And in that one, he was just trying to tell I think you had asked him, Hoove, just about hosting a big recruiting weekend and kind of the tax that has on a head coach and the coaching staff. And he was just telling a story about, we had one recruit, Dalen Smothers, and he's like, we had one recruit whose mother had said, and he just took the step back. Everyone knew it. It was funny. Good stuff.
I'll have that. That's associated with him for me forever. And hopefully Hollywood Smothers. We'll see what he looks like here coming up in just a little bit. So, yeah, check out that series on AllSooners.com. Give you some taste of that football. There's not a lot of football going on right now. There's winter workouts. It's late January. So that gives you some football to get excited about. Spring ball will be coming up before you know it. About a couple months away. I think usually from about when spring camp starts. So we have lots of good stuff there to fill that void as best we can in the meantime. All right, getting some other sports here before we wrap up. We're not going to recap each game, obviously. Men's basketball, since the last show we had, things have changed tremendously. They've lost 3 times since the last time we did the show last Wednesday. They got hammered in Stillwater in the second half in Bedlam. They hung around with Baylor, but it was gross. Couldn't get any rebounds. Lose at home to Baylor. And then got just blown to smithereens last night in Fort Worth. I mean, you got to lay it out there. The team is an abject disaster right now. I mean, it's really, really bad. And they're 2-6 in conference play. This team was supposed to be better than last year's team. They're not. And it started night 1. Remember, they lost Sam Houston State, and it hasn't really ever gotten consistently better. I mean, this is a rough spot right now for this team. They're not. The tournament, they can still obviously make the tournament, but right now they need to worry about just winning another game right now because it's not good.
Yeah, I don't know where Smithereens is. I don't know where it's located, but that is an apt description for where Oklahoma is right now. They've been blown there to smithereens by TCU last night. That was rough. That was hard to watch, even on ESPN Plus. That was hard to watch. The Baylor game, you leave that game, I think, thinking, okay, well, that was a quote-unquote quality loss. This team, they made some strides. You saw some good things. They just couldn't close it out. You like what you see. And then they come out, and it's like Porter said at his post-game press conference last night, first time all year we have not competed. He's like, you're in the middle of Big 12 conference basketball. How did that happen? How did you get to this point in the season? Is it Sherfield? I texted you guys a photo of a bodybuilder last night whose shoulders are like out to here. The guy's got a broad shoulders, and he's been carrying this team for so long. He looked tired last night. He looked worn down. Sherfield did. So when you don't have that offensive punch and your best offensive player looks worn down, plays worn down for the third game in a row, I think that's a bad combination.
Yeah, I think this team has been covered up by the Big 12 because the Big 12 has legitimately 6 teams that are in the top 20, are top 20 teams, and are going to be, circling around. And if you just look at the standings today, like those 6 teams are going to cannibalize themselves. And we've had all these conversations about the toughest schedules, all this stuff. Guys, there are 3 bad basketball teams in the Big 12. West Virginia and Texas Tech are awful. Those are the only 2 teams Oklahoma's beat in the Big 12. OU is a bad basketball team. They are athletically far below par in the Big 12, which means that their bigs especially have to give you something else. We thought that was going to be the shooting for Tanner Groves. The league has figured him out. He is worse, less effective, than he was last year. Sam Godwin does not bring you the same kind of size that even an Ethan Shagwa did, and it's shown. This team can't rebound. So last night, TCU's playing without Eddie Lampkin. That should have been the little glimmer of hope they could glob onto. And they turned the ball over on 4 of the first 5 possessions and never even looked like they were going to try to compete to get back into that game. The questions are going to come, and Porter didn't like these questions last year, and to his credit, he never lost the locker room. That team competed to the bitter end. They weren't good enough, but they competed to the bitter end. The team quit in the second half in Stillwater. They quit for down that final 5 minutes. This team quit about 15 minutes into this basketball game. Porter has a style that's gross to watch. If they're not going to win, there's not going to be any fans in there. So we'll have to see if he has any tweaks as far as pivoting to younger players like we saw the last 5 minutes or not. But it's going to be fascinating to monitor how this team plays out the rest of the way, because they've been close, but they've shown over and over again they are not good enough to win those games. They're going to nick one, but that doesn't mean they're suddenly a good basketball team and deserve to go to the tournament. They're hurtling toward the NIT. It'll be fascinating to see mentally who stays checked in, who checks out, and if this just becomes the freshman and sophomore show the rest of the way.
Hey, the question is, if you're scoring 50, 55, 60 points a game, and you're Porter Moser and you're Oklahoma, you have this roster and you have this coach, who bears that responsibility? Because 55, 60 points a game, 65 points a game, even in the Big 12, is not going to win you. It's not going to get you over 500. So who bears the responsibility? Is it the players' lack of explosiveness, lack of scoring ability, or is it Porter's style of basketball?
Well, we can go round and round on that, but here's the bottom line. Oklahoma's in the 300s in pace. There are only a handful of Power 5 programs that are below Oklahoma in pace. They're in the same neighborhood as Purdue and Houston. That's going to be the 2 that are held up. I know that Houston technically right now it's on a Power 5. They'll be next year. I don't care. The 2 things that Purdue and Houston have that Oklahoma does not. Purdue and Houston, very different. Purdue has just massive size down low. They are old school as far as roster construction, center, power forward that are mammoths of people. Houston has size 1 to 5 and athleticism, and Kelvin Sampson has had years and years and years, decades in college basketball to have the bona fides to recruit those guys. Anyone that's watching Oklahoma basketball right now, what player wants to play in that? Porter micromanages the offense, so you don't have any decisions you're in a set every single time, and he's yelling at you to slow down, slow the pace down so I can call my sets. He overcoaches the hell out of the offense. Defense, they have to be perfect, because if they're not, they're going to lose. And on top of that, this is the same conference where Iowa State and Kansas State have bottomed out and then reemerged in the past couple of years as legit Final Four contenders, at the same time that Oklahoma and Oklahoma State's having the same problem, have just stagnated. You're not attracting any portal talent. You're not attracting any scores, anyone that can play the game the way that they play. It's just not happening.
Yeah, last night was a boiling point because, to Porter's point, they have been competitive. They have had an ability to muck up games and make them kind of gross, and they're right in it at the end. But then at the end, they're not as good. So in the final couple of minutes, the other team makes plays, and they don't, and they lose. That's what they've done this entire season. Last year, they found a way to get a few more of these. But last night, they were not competitive even remotely, and they didn't play with a lot of energy, and they were down 11-0. I mean, it was over right there. Texted Ryan. It's like, this game's over already. It's 4 minutes in. And so last night was a breaking point, I think, for a lot of people. And so let me ask you guys this. We have a lot of practice in this area because we did it a couple times in the football season. We're not going to call for anybody's job. I don't feel comfortable doing that, really. But I want to frame it this way, same way we did in the football season when talking about Brent Venables in the year that he had. Are the concerns valid? Is this going to work? I mean, people are questioning that right now. Is this Porter Moser thing going to work? like long term, because year one was all right. He got a pass for it. He was a really hodgepodge thrown together team. This year's team is his guys. The best player on the team is not even his guy. Jalen Hill is a Lon Kruger guy. The rest of the team is him, and they're pretty much across the board underperforming. How concerned should fans be? Are concerns valid that this hire maybe isn't going to work, and Oklahoma's going to be looking for a new coach here in the next year or two?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that, Josh. I'll just say it right up front. I don't know the answer. But, year one, you get a bunch of guys chased off and a bunch of transfer portal guys. Year two, a bunch of guys chased off, bunch of transfer portal guys. Do you get the same leeway you get in year one now that you're in year two? Because your roster makeup is pretty much the same thing. You've got a bunch of new guys. Some of them can play. Some of them are going to be players later in their careers. At what level of patience does Joe Castiglione need to have with this basketball program right now? I don't know the answer to that.
Right.
And here's the question spin off that. What's the marquee portal guy that Porter Moser's landed that's worked and pushed Oklahoma over the edge? Because that's nobody right now.
Yeah.
It's nobody. And so I honestly think the Porter Moser question is going to be, is Oklahoma playing in the Big 12 next year in basketball? Because if they are, this is what the team's going to look like. Okay. If they're playing the SEC, we've seen they can beat Ole Miss. We've seen they can beat Florida. We saw last year that they were competitive with Arkansas and just not competitive with Auburn. So this is going to be a team in the SEC that is not good enough to hang with the top of the SEC. There are more bad basketball teams. So are OU fans content with playing a disgusting, gross, boring style of basketball, not winning at the highest level because they're not going to beat the Tennessee's, Arkansas's, Alabama's consistently? That's not going to happen with the way that this has gone. But hey, congrats! You can blow out Vanderbilt and Mississippi State. You can beat Florida and Ole Miss. Like, is that good enough? That's not going to be good enough to pack the Lloyd Noble Center, and it's going to be contingent on you. You're going to have to make tournament runs, and what we've seen so far is nothing to suggest that. So I think this is an off season where Porter may have to look within himself and evolve a little bit. They've got to find a way to play with a little bit more pace, or he's got to bring in more athletes in the portal and actually play them and not let that go the way of Marvin Johnson and Joe Bamisile, who are the most athletic guys who can't kiss the floor because of how he runs his rotation.
Right. No, it's a dire situation right now. My general feel, just on a broad sense, I think Porter Moser is a good basketball coach. He is a psychopath in a good way in terms of the amount of hours he puts in the facility, and it just kills him to not be winning. He wants more than anything to have OU rocking and that LNC to be packed. He wants that really badly, but the talent level on the team is just so clearly not up to snuff with the rest of the Big 12, and at a point that comes back to Porter getting players here. So we'll see how that shakes out. I think you give him more time. Like I said, I do think he's a good coach, but this team is a massively disappointing coming into the year. This was supposed to be at least nobody thought they were Final Four good, but they thought that this would be a tournament team, and they're not. They're not right now. They're 2-6 in Big 12 play. And like Ryan said, the only 2 wins they have are against the 2 worst teams in the conference. So, I don't know. We'll see how it goes.
And again, OU had a 13-point lead in Lubbock and blew it and was saved by Uzan, a couple of free throws at the end, and then Jalen. Like, Oklahoma was on the ropes against Texas Tech, who is a joke compared to what the Big 12 puts out.
And they were missing key players in that game too. It's not pretty. And number 2 Alabama comes into town on Saturday. Holy moly. Besides the fact that Alabama is really good, they're also a matchup nightmare. They're so big and athletic. It's I don't know. It would now. I say that I'm going to sound like I'm talking out both sides of my mouth. It wouldn't surprise me for them to muck up the game and stay competitive because that's what they usually do. But boy, on paper that does not look good. And to Ryan's point earlier, I tweeted this last night. We can probably lay off complaining about the crowds for a little bit because the LNC crowds. I've been very critical of that in the past. Right now, you got no leg to stand on if you're OU because the team is just not competitive and they don't play a fun brand of basketball. It's hard to expect people to come out for that right now. That's just the way it is. Yeah. Just the way it is. So
the crowd is the crowd. The OU basketball fan base is the OU basketball fan base. That's not going to change. You got National Player of the Year, and you got a phenomenon like Trae Young, and you've got Final Four teams, and there's still thousands of empty seats. So what are they going to do for a 2-6 Big 12 team?
Right.
They're not going to come out.
No, that's just not going to happen. So if that's your shot, women's basketball can be your chaser here because they're playing very well. They're like the complete antithesis in every way right now. It's actually amazing how opposite these teams are right now. They play so fast, just points everywhere, and they're winning. They won Bedlam on Saturday. They have a legitimate shot to win the Big 12. They're in Austin tonight. I mean, it's mind-blowing when you think about what that program was a couple years ago and what they are right now with Jenny Bronchek. And when we did the show a few weeks ago, who wasn't on the show? He was come back from Florida. It was with Ross, Ryan, and myself after they lost to Baylor. And I was saying at that time, man, what a disappointing loss that is. You know, that's a game you need to win. And maybe like this team isn't what we thought they were going to be. They haven't lost since then. They played really well. Right. I mean, Jenny Bronchek, it's just you can't stress enough what an insanely good job she's done. And they're a good team. They're a fun team.
They've won 5 in a row since that night. They play at Texas tonight. They've got a full 1-game lead right now in the standings. They're in first place, 5-1, I think, in conference play, and they play second place Texas. So it's a huge game tonight. It'll all shake out tonight. Here's the thing: even if they lose badly, they'll still be tied for first place. So plenty of opportunity there. One thing to keep your eye on: Taylor Robertson, 2 away from setting the all-time NCAA 3-point record. 2 away. She needs to hit 2 tonight to break that record. So I'll be watching.
Yeah, for sure. And these are this is the step that Jenny Bronchek and this Oklahoma team can take that they didn't have last year, which is not like a criticism on last year, because Jenny Bronchek talked about how they did it all at once, went from like, oh, we think we're good, oh, we can really compete, oh my gosh, we're in the thick of the Big 12 race, and that was probably just too many steps to take at once. They were in a spot last year where if they could go to Austin, win a game, Oklahoma could really have laid down a marker and said, we're not just in this Big 12 race, we're in this thing to win it. Tonight, Jenny Bronchek returns to the scene, sort of Austin, Moody Center, a little bit different, of her technical last year that they all joked about in the offseason. But Oklahoma, this can be that you compare last year's results to this year's results and say, okay, you move this one over into the win column, and that's really laying something down in a Big 12 that is not bad by any means, but is more wide open since you don't have just the juggernaut of Baylor at the top this year. So that'll be really interesting. And two, in the 2 home games since that Baylor loss, Kansas and OSU, I think they've shown a lot of growth as they came out in the first half of both those games and didn't shoot the ball incredibly well. They shot it better against OSU, but the Cowgirls they were 6 of 11 from 3 in the second quarter, and that was a fun, wide open game. And they locked in defensively in the third and fourth quarters and let that spur them over and didn't shoot themselves out of the game almost, which is kind of what happened against Baylor. So that's that bit of growth. Let's see what happens tonight. But it's just wild to see a roster that goes into every single game of Big 12 play is undersized and compensates with that by playing a wide open, free-flowing style that's incredibly fun and engaging to watch. And oh, by the way, they're probably going to host another NCAA tournament weekend because of that. Weird. Someone else could use a bit of that. I don't know who it is.
Yeah, certainly on track to have home tournament games again, which is it was a foreign concept last year, and it will be again. It's nuts how far that program has come in such a short amount of time. So we'll keep an eye out for that. Texas game tonight, like Who said, that's a big one. Should be fun to watch. Wrapping up with some other sports here, kind of a roundup. Baseball, 2 guys on the Big 12 preseason team today, Jax Nicklaus, John Spikerman. Of course, if you remember their run last year, if they're going to replicate that success, those guys are going to be at the center of it. So makes sense. They're in the Big 12 preseason team. That was just announced today. We'll wait on the preseason poll. Very interesting where he's going to land on that because they're not ranked in any preseason polls. They have so much turnover, because people just don't know what to make of them, I think, generally speaking. And so they're going to be probably lower on the poll than people are expecting. And I imagine that they'll use that as a rallying cry. It's a team that we know all too well right here, looks for motivation. They look for slights, and they're probably going to get one in that Big 12 preseason poll. When that happens, softball, number 1 in everything, total opposite. We talked about it a little bit last week. They have the preseason Big 12 team is just basically their roster. It's ridiculous, and they're number 1 in every poll. And then women's gymnastics, a win over Utah on whatever day that was, Sunday, in their home opener, raised the banner. So kind of a roundup there. What stuck out to you guys from the last week or so?
Yeah, boy. Women's gymnastics and softball and now women's basketball lately have been playing like OU fans want them to, and that they don't lose. They go up against whoever it is, Utah, LSU,
Don't boo.
number 1 team, number 2 team, Oklahoma State in the country. They don't care. Whoever it is, they beat them. And that's what OU fans want. What was the saying we were talking about earlier, guys? OU fans love it when their team wins. I mean, that sounds stupid to say, but the fact of the matter is that's when OU fans come out, go to the gym to watch their team, is when they're dominating people. They got their foot on that throat. Softball, I saw a press release today. Softball, the National Player of the Year nominees came out. OU's only got 8 players on the National Player of the Year nominee list. 8?
Absurd.
They were 7 of the 12 all Big 12 preseason selections. Tiara Jennings and Jordy Ball were unanimous, which led to a lot of like saber rattling from how is Jada Coleman not unanimous? How is Grace Lyons not unanimous? So when the coaches get that, they just get 12 spots on the ballot. So like you just put, if you have 12 second basemen, which wouldn't happen in this conference, then you can do that. I still don't know that there's 12 players better than Grace Lyons or Jada Coleman. I don't know how they were not just like, hold on, let's roll through the OU lineup first, and then we'll backfill with everybody else in the Big 12. But that's the problem they've created there. And Women's Gym had a top 3 in program history attendance night with that meet against Utah. So you can pack the Lloyd Noble Center if it's fun to watch. Imagine that.
And you win. Bottom line, win. If you win, people are there. Is that how it probably should be? No. I mean, in a perfect world, sure, the fans will come out no matter what and support. But that's just not the reality that we live in. You have to win, or in like a case of football, be really good for a long time. You get a little grace period with a bad year. But I promise you, if OU's winning 6 games the next 2 years, Gaylord family's not going to be full either. Okay, you have to win. So we'll see how that goes. Lots going on. Obviously, winter sports, spring sports, softball and baseball coming up real soon. Next week's show will be February 1st. So we're turning a corner here. We're getting close to some fun stuff. So we'll have that for you next Wednesday. We'll be back wrapping up the latest from OU football, of course, as per usual. Latest in basketball. Who knows what's going to happen this weekend, that Alabama game. Ryan and I will be there to witness what could be very ugly. We'll see what happens. We'll have coverage for you from Lloyd Noble Center on Saturday. Women's Hoops recap. Diamond Sports recap, all that good stuff as per usual next week. So we'll see you then. You can catch that show on iTunes, Spotify, Google, iHeart, wherever you get your podcast. If you have an Amazon-able device, just say, Alexa, play the AllSooners podcast. Also post on our website, allsooners.com. Click on the playlist on your phone, your tablet, or your computer. And, of course, you can watch the shows as well on his YouTube page, John Hoover Media. That's it for us. We'll be back next Wednesday. For Ryan Chapman and John Hoover, I'm Josh Callaway. We'll catch you guys next time.